Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not to Back, going over all the Kickstarters, the game founds, all the usual things from cancellations to not funding to updates and to all the new campaigns. But for the third or fourth week in a row, we're starting off with Cult of the Now. Cult of the Now is a new segment where I'm going to pick a single game and just talk about how amazing it is and how cheap and reasonably priced a $30 game can be. Not sponsored by Miniature Market, by the way, but basically Galaxy Trucker this is the second edition. It's a fantastic game. It's been out for a long time, and like I said already, this is like a $30 game. As we go through the rest of these games coming up, and trust me, there are a lot of games I love here, including some other space-themed games, but it doesn't really matter how much I love them. Sometimes you have a hard time realizing $100 plus for a game, $200 plus for a game, and there are some really solid games available right now. Galaxy Trucker is a game about flying through space, building out your spaceship, and then trying to basically survive the things that are thrown at you. It's a half strategy, half chaos, all good fun, and that's Galaxy Trucker. So, with Cult of the Now out of the way, let's start off with the first cancellation. And speaking of gigantic prices, we have Aldarra Reborn. I think it was called Reborn, but Aldarra, which got to $157,000, and they did cancel, not because they didn't fund. They did fund, or they got close to funding, I should say, and they were clearly on track to funding, but there was enough of a pushback in the general comments that they decided to take a look and reevaluate the campaign. Basically, Aldarra is offering these gigantic spaceships over here, which unfortunately do add to the price. I highly recommend checking out Mark Street from the Dice Towers video, both in general because Mark Street's videos are great, and secondly because you'll see just how ridiculously large the miniatures for this game are. They are very large, which on the plus side adds to a degree of gravitas and a very cool factor to the table. On the other side, it makes the price point for this game $465 for the base and expansion, and that's before you get to buying the STLs. That's a $465 Canadian, granted, game for just the amount of content there are, just because of the sheer size of the miniatures. So they did fund, or are on the way to funding, I should say, but they wanted to address the general pushback and disappointment from a lot of people who are interested in this game, and then went from being interested to being, I don't know if it's worth it to me. And as usual, when you make these changes, and they're going to be coming back to Kickstarter in some way, shape, or form, they're making changes, they're having smaller miniatures, a cheaper price point, and as usual, you do have some people who are frustrated. They're like, I like the large miniatures, I wanted to pay for that. And some people don't, and it's always a balance when you try to make one segment happy over another. I am curious to see whether they do both when they come back. That might not be viable or sustainable. I mean, obviously, if you do the STLs, it's a different conversation for those who want to 3D print them. But that's Aldarra, a cancellation based on feedback and coming back to Kickstarter at some point. Next up, we have Way Too Many Cats. Way Too Many Cats, which by the time you watch this, honestly, might be funded. I mean, we're at $14,000 of a $15,000 goal, 341 backers. This is from Weird Giraffe Games. They have 11 Kickstarters already. They generally put out a bunch of games. Their last game I actually kind of want now, because I've since gotten into trick-taking. The last game was a trick-taking game that I passed because it was trick-taking, but now I'm trying to explore a variety of trick-taking games. It's all a journey and an exploration, but this is Too Many Cats. Too Many Cats, which is basically giving you a puzzly style gameplay of trying to micromanage different objectives and try to score as many points as possible. It's a little bit, what's it called, Cat Lady, and then a little bit Cloaked Cats, a little bit Calico, not Cloaked Cats, a little bit Cat Lady, a little bit Calico, one of those scoring objectives games where you're managing different things. Every single round, you're going to have some cats you're trying to grab over here. If we can find them over here, you have the option of selecting different cats, or selecting the last cat at the end of the alley, but getting more pet tokens, or various, not just pet tokens, but a variety of tokens over here that all have different scoring objectives. Some cats want different tokens on the spots, sometimes you want different sets of pets, but if you get the wrong sets of pets, you might score negative values. So you're just trying to be mindful as you place cats into your grid to score as many points as possible as you manage and juggle different scoring criteria. It's going to be coming in at roughly $29 for the game. I don't generally go heavily into value on games that aren't funded, but this is a Weird Giraffe game, which means it's likely going to follow the usual pattern. It will be available at retail. It likely will not hold its value that much in the secondhand market. Price point's not bad, but it's also not great. That's generally where the games fall. Not doing a heavy deep dive in this. It usually follows the same pattern for their games. From there, we have Twin Palms, 278 backers, $6,500 to go. This one might cross the finish line. It might. We'll see. 22 days to go. It's very possible it will sit there and fund, or it might stagger along and not make it. Speaking of trick-taking games, this is a trick-taking game. I covered this in the channel. You can check that out. It's basically a game of you have 1, 2, or 3 suits depending on the difficulty level that you choose to play at. So 1, 2, or 3 suits. You can play the easy mode with a single suit that you can play only 2 players. You can escalate to 3 or 4 players with 2, 3, or 4 players with 2 suits, or go all the way up to 5 players players with 3 suits in play. And then the more suits you have in play, the more matching you're juggling, because the game ultimately comes down to playing 2 cards at once to try to get the correct trick based on a scoring hierarchy of scoring pairs of the right color, and then going down a slow hierarchy. Again, the hierarchy gets more and more complicated as you go through the various escalating levels of difficulty in the game. There's 4 different levels, and that's basically what it is. It's a fun, fast-paced, easy, accessible trick-taking game for $20. That is Twin Palms. From there, we have Rumours and Legends, another game that might be fun by the time you watch it, although this one I think we probably still have a few days to go, although likely will fund before the campaign is over. That part's almost certainly true, but Rumours and Legends is basically a classic twist, a cryptid twist on the mystery deduction genre. Now, from what I can see of this game, when they say mystery deduction genre, they're not talking awkward guess, they're not talking Search for Planet X, they're talking more Clue. That seems to be the genre they're going for, which is not inherently a bad thing, but just factor that in terms of what the background for this game is, as far as where the development is as far as those things go. Becca Scott from Good Time Society has a great how to play, showing you how to play the game. It does look on the lighter side, which doesn't mean it's not a good game, it just means it looks like it's a kind of game that's not for me and what I'm looking for from this style of game. It looks like it's more old school in its approach to game design. That said, they're almost funded. It clearly has a target audience. They do have 2 pledge levels over here. They have the $55 pledge level, which gives you standees for the various acrylic standees, which are much nicer for the various monsters or creatures or whatever you want to call them. And then we have $75 for the standard edition, which gives you the miniatures, those miniatures that we can see over here. If I scroll back, of these busts over here, the Yetis or whatnot. The short style of the game, which I forgot to talk about, is Dr. Daffy, I think his name is, Daffle. Daffle disappears. Yeah, Professor Daffle disappears, and you're trying to track down what incident, location, and creature is involved in his disappearance through a degree of just slowly making guesses, having other players disprove you, and eventually being certain you're right and trying to, well, deduce that. That's basically what's going on in Rumours and Legends. Next up, in the update category, we have Deep Rock Galactic, which is doing tremendously well, but also has kind of slowed down in how well it was doing. $2.3 million, 3 days to go. This will likely still get close to the $3 million, but that's still a far cry from the $4 million it was easily trending towards based on the initial first few days, but it's one that has slowed down a bit. You've seen a little bit of a pullback, a variety of different reasons, but overall, again, still doing phenomenally well, don't get me wrong. We have, 16,000 backers so far. They have released 2 gameplay videos, possibly more, but 2 that I saw. They released their own gameplay video, which is very well done. You can check that out. And also One Stop Co-op Shop. One Stop Co-op Shop did a gameplay on the game as well, so you can check out that as well. So 2 different gameplays to get a feel for how the game plays, to get a feel for whether this is a game for you. This is a dungeon crawler already, like we talked about last time. I did a full should you back it on this game. They've released more stretch goals, more content for the game. It does seem like this will be coming back to Kickstarter in case you're interested in, not necessarily trying it now, but trying it in the future. I'm still where I was last time, very compelled by the game while not being sure that I want to spend the money to get it, considering how many other dungeon crawlers I already have. And so I'm very compelled, very interested in it. And especially from, again, speaking of Mark Street from the Dice Tower, he seemed to really like the game. He's in the comments of my last video saying it's a great game, he had a ton of fun, and it does make me want the game. But shelf control is also a thing, so we'll see. But that's basically the only updates. The main reason I'm talking about today is just to let you know that there are still stretch goals that they've unlocked, still content that has slowly been going on and on as they unlock stretch goals, and that there are 2 gameplay videos you can check out if you want to see those to push you one way or the other. Because that's the nice thing about gameplay videos, they can push you one way or the other. It doesn't have to be pushing you towards backing. It might often be enough to be like, you know what, it just doesn't look like it's a game for me. And then money saved to unfortunately spend on the next board games. Speaking of next board games, we have new campaigns. Starting off the bat with Dinosaur Exhibit, 42 hours to go, which means by the time you watch this, less than that. Less than that is the number. 42 hours to go for Dinosaur Exhibit, which is a roll and write not really polyomino, but roll and write shape game, a tile placement game. You're going to be basically rolling dice, and you're going to be marking one of the symbols down on your own board, and the other players mark the other symbol on their board. So you're slowly crossing out the foundation, as it were, of how you build out your exhibit, how you place things down. So there's a degree of being mindful of yourself and a degree of being mindful of how to not enable others to help them get what they want. Meanwhile, you're going to be then taking various tiles and placing them down into your exhibits as you build up the spots, going for a variety of scoring objectives as you go through the game. Looks interesting. I'm also not confident that the control you have over others' boards is influential enough to actually be meaningful. I am curious, because if you actually could really control control, like, you know, stopping them from getting what they want, that's great, but I don't know if there's enough symbols. I think you might need like a 8 or 10-sided die for that to really be a factor. With only 6 faces, I don't know if there's enough control to stop someone so much as temporarily, partially, potentially, marginally delay them, if that makes sense. But I'm just projecting based on seeing it myself. Pledge levels for this one, we're going to have $6 for the print and play, and then we have $22 for the base game and $40 for additional copies or whatnot. Overall, this falls in the category of a cheaper game with not a ton of, demand for it, which means it's less likely to hold its value. We have 272 backers. It's just usually those things don't have a ton of demand, and therefore that lack of demand translates to the secondhand market as well. So if this is not a game for you, you're probably not getting your money back on this one. At the same time, if you're interested in it because of that low demand, Kickstarter is likely the best place to get your hands on it. From there, we have 51st Date Ultimate Edition from Portal Games. And by the way, I debated for my Cult of the Now segment, I debated putting 51st Date as the game, but I thought that would be a little too snarky, as if you should get that instead of 51st Date Ultimate Edition, and the Cult of the Now is not meant to be an attack on any one game, it's meant to be a reminder that great games can be cheap and not just expensive. So, but that said, you could get 51st Date right now, you will be missing out on a whole bunch of extras, but you may or may not care about the amount of extras. You see, 51st Date Ultimate Edition is bringing you 51st Date, a game that's been out in multiple iterations for a long time. There was the original 51st Date way back in the day. Then there was Imperial Settlers, then there was 51st Date Master Set, then there was Imperial Settlers Empires of the North, and I think that's where we're up to today, except now we have 51st Date Ultimate Set. So there's constantly, just new content. When I compare, by the way, for those who don't know, when I compare Imperial Settlers and Empires of the North to 51st Date, they're all built on the same basic framework. Different games, but the same basic framework. They were all re-implementations of one another to various degrees. So there is context, and it's not just me randomly saying game titles. If I was doing that, I'd be like, Catan, Carcassonne, Gloomhaven, and stuff. Yeah, that's basically it. Joel Eddy. Who's this guy? Who's Joel Eddy? Drive-Thru Games? Never heard of him. For context, that's funny if you watched yesterday's video. That's mean and ignorant if you didn't. So, I guess watch yesterday's video if you didn't. But anyways, going back to 51st Date. This is the Ultimate Edition of the game, giving you all content released thus far, all promos, all expansions, and a new expansion as well, all for the price of £80, or €80, I should say, not pounds, €80 for the game, for all of that stuff. There's some additional extras and optional buys you can get. Let's go through those extras and all the stuff you're getting, and then let's talk about, does it make sense to back it, does it not? Because you could get the other game cheaper, but you're getting a whole lot less stuff. So, what do you get for all of that? Well, you're getting all the expansions. What's in the box? We get the base game, we get the various upgrade, GameFound exclusive tokens. We're going to have a bunch of those stuff over there, upgraded, deluxification stuff. Anytime you see that GameFound exclusive tag in this purple color instead of the GameFound green, I don't know why, but I mean, it's still, you can see it's still exclusive. So you have all those extras in your game. You're going to have the expansions. You're going to have the 3 main expansions that we have to date, the Scavengers, the Allies, and the Moloch expansion. But you also have the No Man's Land, which is a new expansion for the game, as well as the mini expansions, a bunch of, these various, faction sets, and then more GameFound exclusive promos in the shape of all of these cards, these arena tile, the 74-page long novel, all that stuff over there, as far as the extras you're getting. Additionally, there's stretch goals that are being unlocked as well as you go through it, more cards, more content, more stuff, and then some optional buys, including, good for them, donating to Ukraine as well. So they have those an option over there in case you want to do that. Well, I don't want to... See, now I got stuck, because now I just mentioned Ukraine, which means now I can't not talk about it. So I'm going to take an interlude when this campaign is done to briefly talk about Ukraine. I wasn't planning on, we'll get to that in a second, but either way, we'll do an interlude there. But anyways, going back to this for a second, so 51st Date Master Set, should you get it, should you not, doesn't make sense. The short version is price point alone if you compare what you're paying for GameFound compared to what you can get at retail. Price point alone if you just compare the base game and 3 expansions that are already available, and when I say available, I mean the price points of them. They're actually not easily available, they're in between print runs. The price point is already pretty good, coming in at €80 plus shipping. It is going to be a little bit more expensive than those 3. Combine the fact that you're getting the exclusives, the upgraded, the extra expansion, all the stuff over there, combine the fact that they're out of print, and overall the price point for what you're getting here is pretty good. It's not amazing, blowing your mind amazing, but if you wanted the game anyway, and if you're the type of person who would have picked up the expansions, I would heavily recommend getting the GameFound, because the extras and price point and all that is totally worth it. On the other hand, if you're someone who would have been totally happy with the base game, you can still get the base game. You don't have to get the GameFound and wait forever and wait a long time. You can just get the base game and be totally happy. So I think where I lie in this one is, if you're going to pick up the base game alone and you're not really going to use the expansions, just go to retail. If you are interested in all the expansions, the GameFound price and the extras, I think, are well worth it. And so we'll do a brief interlude to talk about Ukraine now. I wasn't planning on, but yeah, basically Ukraine, short version of Ukraine if you missed the details and information. I was not ready for this. The short version, let's go ahead and make this full screen. So, short version of everything going on with Ukraine. Ukraine, if you didn't know, has been invaded. If you didn't know, you've been under a rock, and I kind of envy your ability to be under a rock, and thanks for showing up for one of my videos. That's very, very nice of you. But Russia sat and danced around Ukraine for a while. I'm not getting into the full political everything for the past few weeks, but they invaded Ukraine, which is historical in an incredibly sad and unfortunate way. The last time that a country has like fully invaded for the purposes of taking over, we're not talking skirmishes. Skirmishes unfortunately happen all the time. Death happens all the time. Those things are unfortunate and they're sad and they're bad. But we're talking like a full-scale invasion to take over another country. That is not a common thing we see anymore. I'm not heavily going to go into what does it mean, that, anything else. What I will say is, speaking personally, I'll go from my personal stance, okay? Speaking personally, it is heart-rendering to see the various videos and content coming out of Ukraine that is like a reminder of just how bizarrely close to home this is. Not from a geographical landscape, from the landscape of like seeing tanks rolling down highways as cars drive past the tanks, seeing people in apartment buildings filming rockets hitting nearby locations, seeing people literally on the streets shooting at invading troops just trying to protect their homes, seeing people cower in their homes and having like a shed nearby blow up from a missile. It is incredibly bizarre to see this invasion happening in an urban setting. It's just as somebody who lives in a city, like, it's bizarre to see this kind of thing happen. It is scary. It is shocking. It is devastating. I don't have other words to really use. It's absolutely bizarre. On the world stage and the world scale, we're seeing NATO being potentially mobilized for the first time ever since its inception. We're seeing a lot of what do you call it? Sanctions being listed, but debatably whether it's more or less than it should be, and debatably whether it's appropriate in terms of the level of what should be done. And I don't have answers. I'm not a political expert. I don't know what makes sense or doesn't make sense. I don't know what steps should or shouldn't be taken from the mindset of being a political expert or anything. I just know that it's terrifying. Like, I work with some people who are in Ukraine, and they basically said, like, it's bizarre to get an email that basically says something along the lines of, hey, we're going to try to do stuff, but we may or may not be able to because we're currently, trying not to die. And it sounds glib, but it's almost weirdly shocking how they're both trying to, like, keep their life going and their responsibilities and obligations going while being mindful that they now live in a country that's been invaded. It's absolutely insane. There's a book that I really recommend. I really recommend this book. It's an older book. I remember reading it when I was a teenager. It's called Tomorrow When the War Began. Okay, I believe it takes place in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. Tomorrow When the War Began. And I remember it stuck with me for years. I don't think it's the best book ever. I just remember it always stuck with me growing up because it really put me in the mindset. And I read it when I was like 12 or 13. I read it a long time ago. But it really put me in the mindset of what it means to be invaded by another country. There's a movie as well with I want to say with Chris Hemsworth, potentially, that I think it's based on a different series, but it feels very, very similar. But it's the same idea of kind of the weird, gross reality of being in nowadays time and having your country invaded. Yeah, I don't have any clever segues or anything else here. This is just I saw the Ukraine thing, I called it out, and then I couldn't not go on. I mean, I didn't plan on bringing it up because the problem is exactly where I am now. I don't see a way to bring up this subject without going into it in a way that is useless and doesn't feel like I can actually do anything helpful with it. But to not talk about it also feels problematic. To address it and then not talk about it feels the most problematic, which is why we are where we are. So I wish everyone in Ukraine as much safety as possible, and hopefully this, I don't know. I don't have anything easy to say, so I'm gonna horribly and reluctantly move on now to the next thing, because that's what this video is for, and now it feels weird and wrong to do that. So I don't see. Now I'm about to go to Unsettled. Okay, so here's where we are. Now we're up to Unsettled, which is normally where I'd be like, Unsettled, it's an amazing game, I love it, and I do love it, but now it feels like a weird, awkward tangent. By the way, Oneb, sorry for dragging you into this now, because now you're into this. I'm gonna move forward and be excited like I'm supposed to be, because I am excited. I do like Unsettled. It just feels weird and wrong to move from that to the next. but we'll go ahead because that's what we do. We just, deal with the shock and awe and just move on with life. So we've spent the past 2 years getting used to that mentality, so hey, why not now? Unsettled, board game content plus all new content, $1 million. Unsettled crossed the $1 million mark, which does mean, by the way, when Chris George from Room and Board, snake that he is, inevitably puts out his 5 reasons not to back Unsettled, I will be there in the comments attacking him for having to dare have the audacity to attack Unsettled. Listen, you want to attack Marvel Zombies, be my guest, okay? I get it. It's $600. It's a ton of plastic gore. There's all the reasons in the world not to back Marvel Zombies. But if you can come up with 5 reasons not to back Unsettled, I will be over there on Room and Board's channel trying to intentionally be antagonistic and mean and aggressive in the comments about every single one of his reasons and how they hold no merit whatsoever. For context, by the way, if you haven't seen it already, I did review Unsettled and I gave it a 5 out of 5. It is a great game. And I love Vindication, by the way. Vindication was my top 10 of all time last year. It was my number 8 of all time this year. Only continue to grow, which, to quote Tom Vassell, a game that even stays the same in your top 100 means it actually grew, because otherwise other things are constantly taking their place. And that's 100% true. The fact that Unsettled not only held its own but managed to move to an 8, that's not true. Vindication managed to hold its own but move to an 8. Absolutely amazing. And I only played Unsettled after filming my top 100 of all time, so it's not even relevant. We'll have to wait till next year to see where it lands. And part of that will be dependent on how often I play it over the next year. But if the past few weeks is anything to go by, the answer will be a lot. And Unsettled, they're coming back to Kickstarter with the opportunity to get the base game, the expansions, all the content. No, there's no big box. That's not coming. They already said that. At least not coming now. Maybe in the future, but they plan on having more content for the game. So now just seems like a weird time to put a big box out there when it would be premature and replaced the next time they do another Kickstarter. And all I heard is there's more content coming for Unsettled, so that I'm happy with that. But if this is a game that's fantastic, the whole intro video over here, I mean, I am biased here because I'm in the intro video, but this is like a hype machine of just tons of content, tons of reviewers who are talking about how much they love the game, and I completely believe that. It's a fantastic game. It feels very much like Vindication to me, which is also, going back to Tom Vassell, it's shocking to me that he doesn't like Unsettled and he likes Vindication, because to me they feel very similar in what they're doing, but hey, who knows? In any case, I mean, opinions are opinions. You're allowed to have opinions. I didn't love Kingdoms Forlorn while everyone else loved it, and that kind of thing does happen. But either way, going back to Unsettled, Unsettled is a space exploration game. It's a space exploration game of trying to survive a variety of different planets. With this newest Kickstarter, we're going to be up to 9 planets, unless, of course, they add even more in the unlock, stretch goals, daily unlocks, whatever they have going on through the Kickstarter. We're going to be at a minimum of 9 planets, potentially more, and each one is giving you a different puzzle to solve. Same basic frameworks in play, but the puzzles all have the planets and their specific objectives and challenges all vary a bit as you go through them. So lots of fun things to jump into there. We have more than that in terms of new content, though. It's not the only thing we have. We have 3 new planets. Let's see if we can go through them over here. Let's see if we can scroll up to the new planets and talk about them, because there's a whole bunch of the old planets. Old planets are great. It's just a survival thing, trying to make sure you basically don't run out of endurance and all die before you accomplish your goals across the various planets and the specific things they have. I'm not going to focus on the old planets because, I mean, I could, but it would take longer. But starting off with the new planets, we have Kogoya, which is a vine-based planet. Tons of vines, tons of things going on. I honestly, the part that has me most intrigued, if you look at the art here, is this planet has these tendrils snaking out that if you don't think about it, it just seems like a nice art. If you do think about it, holy hell, Batman, what kind of tendril is snaking out to the point that you can see it from space? Is that flailing around, whacking the planet? What is going on with these tendrils here? Okay, that is, again, on a little mothball, that makes sense. On something the size of a planet, we have some real issues going on here. So I'm a little scared of what that is and whether that actually manifests, or maybe it's just cute art that nobody thought about it, but holy, those things are terrifying. But that's Koyoga, the vine-based planet. Then we have Blackout, which I'm so looking forward to. This is almost certainly the first new planet that I play out of the box, by the way. They would like you to know, and I'll make the point now, you do not have to play the planets in order. They recommend you don't to a certain extent. I personally recommend Winora as a first good planet to kind of get your feet wet without having a ton of new rules thrown at you. But after that, any order, whatever you want. There's no order to the planets, they're just explorations, and Blackout will likely be my first planet because Luna is scary in this one. Luna, your helpful little robot, is not so helpful, and there's some sort of technological issue going on your ship, basically. Then we have Nier over here. Nier is going to be, Nier is a bunch of dark secrets and a ethereal sense of uncertainty haunting every moment. I don't have a firm idea of what's going on in Nier, but, I mean, I'll play it, because why not? And then we have some new other content. We have the Explorer Avatar Punch Pack, which I'm very happy about because honestly, I didn't really mention this in my review because it felt pedantic, or maybe I did. I don't think I did. But I hate the little spaceship tokens they have in the game. It feels like these disconnected heads on top of their bodies. I love these ones where you actually see this stupid spacesuit going on. This works for me much better. It's a small little quality of life adjustment, but I am much happier with these over here. Again, just, the little $3 pack over there and included in some pledge levels. Then we have the Survival Task Community Pack. This is a big deal. For $5, you're basically getting one new scenario for each of the existing 6 planets. That's $5, less than $1 per full new scenario of gameplay. This, by the way, is one of the reasons I am less concerned about the replayability of Unsettled. In general, there are conversations around how replayable it is, how many scenarios could you have, at what point does it get boring or repetitive, and while the planet framework will, to a certain extent, eventually lose some of its luster, the individual scenarios are fairly easy to create an entirely new scenario. You can create 4 new cards, and boom, you have a new scenario for your planet, which is excellent, and there's a decent amount you can fit into the box as you go through them. And worst comes to worst, you always have a separate box for them. So I'm hopeful for a lot of content over time, but again, $5 for 6 new full gameplays, that should, to some extent, ease your concerns about replayability. We have the Scientific Specializations pack, which I like with a caveat. Scientific Specializations give you this opportunity to specifically go for certain types of specializations, and as you do so, earn extra abilities on your sideboard. Very intriguing with the caveat that I'm a little concerned that this basically makes the choice of specialization meaningless, because would there be any real incentive not to go through that pathway? I was speaking for myself, having played Unsettled, I don't find the incentive to go for a particular type to generally, there are exceptions, but for the most part, to be strong enough to overcome the benefit of going for a specific one if you have an incentive to do so. I'd almost rather these be double-sided so you can flip them, and then as you play the game, choose which way you're progressing, so that there feels like a sense of agency, other than, hey, I got the touchy board, so I'm clearly progressing in that pathway. So overall, I like it, I'm excited, I'm definitely getting it, but with that small caveat as to what it does for the direction of things. Then we have, additionally, the Purple Rift opening as well, and then we have the Scientific Fascinations over here, which is another little sideboard over here that lets you take, I love the way it's written over here. It's basically like, take the gamble, use the insights you gain to fill the mysterious gaps you've been pondering through your life instead of the applications outlined for the task at hand. In other words, this is known as, hey, I had to get distracted easily, and so instead of actually doing what I'm supposed to do, I will just discard this scientific discovery and anomaly, and, I feel fulfilled inside. The person doing this feels like an airhead the way it's written, but I like the concept of it. It's basically another choice as far as what you do with the resources in the game, and that's all what Unsettled is, a choice of what to do with the resources in the game. Past that, we start moving to pledge levels. We have a bunch of pledge levels covering new content, covering different forms of new content, covering up all the stuff, all the way up to, the $210 or $250 with sleeves to get absolutely everything for the game. So tons of ways to get a ton of stuff for the game. I highly recommend this one. Overall, as far as will it hold its value, will it not? If the current market is anything to go by, this is an easy back. If you are concerned whether Unsettled is for you, this is one where the current Kickstarter pledges or whatever are going for well more than what people paid for. So if you get the game, if you play the game, if you're like, Unsettled is terrible, I don't like this at all, you can get your money back. You can sell it in the secondary market and get your pledge level. So this is a safe back for an amazing game. I'm biased, obviously. Well, I'm not biased. I like the game. I'm not biased. I just like the game. It's nothing to do with bias. But this is a great game. Highly recommend it. I like Unsettled. So do a lot of other people. You may or may not be one of those people. One thing worth mentioning, I don't know if you need to get all the content. Every single box, every single basically kit you get or planet you get is effectively 3 full missions at a minimum. Even if you get the original 6 packs and you get that little $5 scenario pack, you'll be looking at a decent price point for getting 6 times 4, 24 different games out of it. I don't know about you, most of my games don't see 24 plays, and yes, they are replayable easily. Maybe not next week, but if you go back to one of these planets a year later, which is easy enough to do, I doubt you're sitting there thinking, oh, I remember exactly what to do and how to do it. It's still gonna be a fun explorative journey if you do the same exact mission a year and a half later. I don't know about you, but I've played the same campaign in many different games I played. It does have the benefit of a little degree of exploration, and some of that luster is gone, but yeah, you don't need to get all the content. You might want to get all the content, in which case you do you, but you definitely don't need it, especially if this is a game you're playing infrequently. Moving on, not Room and Board, we covered Room and Board. Moving on to Starship Interstellar. Starship Interstellar from Pendragon Game Studio. They did The Thing, they did what's it called? No, it's not there. It's somewhere there. They did The Thing. and they did that other game. Now it's going to bother me. Last Aurora, that's what it was. But basically, those are the 2 games they have under the belt, and now we have Starship Interstellar, which, speaking frankly, I don't know enough about to speak confidently towards it. You're building a spaceship as you escape the fact that the planet you're on is slowly being exploded by the sun or taken apart, whatever it is, and you're slowly working towards building the Starship Interstellar, and that's where I lose track of all the things you're doing as you move tokens around the board to do a whole bunch of stuff. Again, I did watch stuff on this game, but I don't know enough to talk confidently, and sometimes I like to just say that instead of trying to sound confident when I'm not. But that's what's going on in this one. We currently have 500 backers, and it's a fairly expensive game. 590 backers, fairly expensive as far as everything's concerned over here. We're looking at 89 euro, $101 for the Explorer pledge, $130 for the Governor pledge, which gives you the plastic planet set. That means you get all this stuff over here, but you also get the plastic planets over here, which gives you more of a 3D feel to your game board, no real gameplay aspects. Then we have the Savior pledge all in for $163, and that gives you all the stuff we talked about so far, as well as some gameplay stuff. We have the Governor miniature, not really gameplay. We have the Danger from Cooper expansion, the expansion to be revealed, and expansion to be revealed. So an all in for this, but again, that's a lot of money for the game. It could be amazing, could be good. I don't really know. I don't have a good sense of this. In general, what I will say is Pendragon Studios' prior games, they are decently well rated. The Thing, decently well rated so far. The Last Aurora, decently well rated. They don't seem to be smash out hits, but they do seem to be liked enough that I feel you're probably getting a good game here. But there's a difference between a good game and a $163 good game, and that's where the question is on the table. And then, of course, plus shipping, plus VAT, plus all of that stuff as well. So I'm skeptical this one will hold this value. It feels like you regularly on Kickstarter or GameFound or wherever, you do see these larger games that tend to pick up a solid, smaller group of people. Some of them do a fine job holding their value and being just totally fine after, and others don't. Others, the best price, the most expensive you'll pay is over on Kickstarter. This goes back to Galaxy Trucker. You know, you have a $163 game here that we don't know anything about, or we have a $30 game that's been in the BGG top few hundred for 10 years now. So that's always the weird balance here. Moving on to Legacy's Allure. Legacy's Allure, 171 backers, $32,000. This coming to you from Keith Rice, and this, by the way, watching this Kickstarter video, Keith, if you're watching this, hi. Watching this Kickstarter video here feels like I'm being sold a sham wow. Like, it feels like a full-on, you know, and wait, there's more. This Kickstarter playmat can also be used as a neck scarf. No, I'm not making that up. That's genuine, by the way. It's really, I highly recommend watching the video. It's very entertaining, but it's also informative. I just love the general pitch and feel of things. I really can't offer these prices forever. Now's the time. It's great. It's really, really great. In any case, what is Legacy's Allure? Legacy's Allure is a customizable card-based war game without all the miniatures and the board games and all the extra stuff that makes it hard to table. The goal is to be travel, portable, to have a degree of mechanics coming out, to have deck building, to have a yearly seasonal arc, whatever it is, as they tweak cards and give new content. But it's basically giving you a skirmish game without the cost, the price point, the difficulty, the barriers, all those stuff of typical skirmish games. It's basically going to be a two-player head-to-head system. I don't know if there's other modes of play, but the defined general mode of play will be a two-player, 1-versus-1 game, which you're basically going to be building out your deck, either using a standard deck or customizing your deck as you go head-to-head and deal with the various abilities you have on your characters, on your cards, as you move around, as you position, as you try to take out your opponent, take out the enemy, and do all of that. Overall, I've played the game, I like the game, but it's within a genre that I don't like, which is, I've historically said on the channel, these games where you have deck building and tons of cards and 2 players, I generally don't love them, and I'm generally resistant to them, not because they're not good, but because I find that I kind of have to mentally really invest in them or not bother at all, and I tend to lean towards the not bother at all, unless they're like more localized, like a game like Hanamakoji, like Radlands, games that are like very localized in a smaller box. That's a different story. Once you start moving into like build your own deck and tons of cards and learn everything, I'm just not the target audience for it. But that said, having played it, I did enjoy it, while also, you know, not being the target audience. But overall, this is one that, you know, lots of high fantasy art, lots of cards, lots of abilities, lots of tactical play. This very much does have a tactical play. You will feel clever as you're playing through it, and that's overall what's going on here. You can watch more videos for the actual gameplay, the abilities. It has a nice factor that when you flip over the cards, the abilities are right there on the back of the cards. You don't need to hide any of that and like buried in a rule book and 14 pages deep. So lots of stuff over there, and that's basically what's going on there. And then we have $40 for the Swordsman pledge. We have $80 for the Elite Swordsman pledge. All these various pledges giving you more and more content for the game. Will it hold its value? Will it not? Overall, probably not. Generally, these styles of games don't do well in the secondhand market. Same basic problem. You tend to have a lot of card games. They're very accessible. They're very easy. The Kickstarter does have these full art options over there. So there's extra stuff on the Kickstarter that you can get here that you won't be able to get later. Although nothing's really exclusive in the typical sense, at least not gameplay-wise. Nothing gameplay is exclusive. They're very much leaning into, hey, gameplay first and foremost, so it's not collectible, it's not exclusive, none of those stuff. Some extras and price points and stuff you can get over here, but that's what's going on for Legacy's Allure. Moving on. Lobotomy 2 Manhunt. Lobotomy 2 Manhunt, this is the second version of Lobotomy. And no, from Titan Forge, by the way. And if you have the original Lobotomy, well, you can't really cross-match things mostly. You can kind of get some of the cards, but your Lobotomy and Lobotomy 1 and Lobotomy 1 and Lobotomy 2 are not inherently cross-compatible unless you buy the various upgrade kits or cards. It's because the gameplay is a different game. It is not simply an expansion where you can merge things together. It is a streamlined, cleaned up, adjusted version of the original Lobotomy, which is good because the original Lobotomy was both well-liked as a game, as well as having lots of complaints and critiques around the streamlinedness, around the rules, around things like that. So between having better miniatures, more new stuff, new content, hopefully cleaned up rules and streamlined aspects, and if you look at the FAQ, they cover some of the gameplay changes, so it does look like they're trying to streamline it out a bit. I think this is likely going to be, you know, all the fun of the Lobotomy, but more so, just hopefully more so, with less issues, less barriers in the way. This is a game which you're basically, for context, it's a dungeon crawler to a degree. It's a typical dungeon crawler kind of gameplay in which you're playing as various patients who are living out the madness in your mind. So you're kind of playing the game, but in theory, nothing that you're going through is actually happening. When you face off a monster, it might be some, you know, orderly trying to put you back in your bed. But it's all, again, that's more the theme behind the game. I don't think that actually plays out or connects to any gameplay wise. Practically speaking, as far as the gameplay is concerned, you're a character with abilities. You can lean into your insanity, powering up as you embrace your insanity and your special powers and your abilities. And then meanwhile, you have these various baddies that you're fighting along the way as you gather various gear, as you find junk to upgrade your gear, things like that. Again, typical dungeon crawler, not in a negative way, just typical dungeon crawler kind of thing. We do have a lot of fun little references to various characters and various lore and whatnot. We have this guy who looks suspiciously like someone who makes drugs in the back of a RV, Breaking Bad basically. We have a bunch of characters who I don't know. I just don't know the IP behind them. We have Harry Potter somewhere, which I found particularly messed up. We have Harold Thunderscar. I found this to be particularly messed up. The idea that Harry Potter's just living in his own fantasy world where he's created this whole thing and he's just all made up kind of ruined Harry Potter for me, just seeing this character on its own, honestly. We have other stuff as well. There are more tie-ins to various pop culture, different things. They have a bunch of stuff going on there. And they have a bunch of character packs and expansions and add-ons. They have a few pledge levels. Let's go to the pledge levels here. Rewards. You have the Madness Pledge with all the new character packs, and it's not everything. They do have some stuff you can get, including buying fairly expensive versions of the Season 1 monsters. They're fairly expensive, and they cover this in the FAQ because of the fact that they expect lower print runs of them. So some of the things they're doing, they're not really commissioning molds and doing all that. They're 3D printing them, but that does mean it's more expensive. So some of those things, if you want the original content, you're going to be paying a premium for. That's all original content. For the new content, it's much more affordable, at least comparatively speaking. We have the €79 admission pledge, the Sanity pledge for €129. I'll give you the Criminally Insane pack, which is slowly growing out and developing with those stretch goals as we go. So if you scroll down here, you can see the various monsters, the various more monsters, the heroes. The heroes is probably the wrong terminology. The patients you're fighting as, the whole thing's dark and twisted in a way that actually is appealing. Art looks great, theme looks great, all those things look great. I'm not totally sold yet myself on where or how it stands out. What makes this amazing, or is it just good? Sometimes games don't have to stand out as being unique. They're just good as far as the sum of its parts. I know Jesse and Shira from Quackalope, they really enjoyed this one and really leaned heavily into it and seem to be very, very much on the fence in this one. Not on the fence, very much into this one. For myself, I am compelled while also not being sold yet whether this stands out enough compared to the way too many dungeon crawlers I already have and keep backing, unfortunately. But that is everything going on over here. Let's just scroll down through some of these over here. So they're already hidden away. So we'll find more as the days unlock, and that's all going to be revealed. In any case, and then we have Wicked Jimmy here. Wicked Jimmy, can you figure out who that is? Wicked Jimmy, or Jimmy Wicked, or Jay Wicked, or Jay Wick, and he's holding a dog. That's the process here. That's John Wick, buddy. That's John Wick over there. Any case, moving on. Should you back it? Should you not? Honestly, it's a hard one. This game in general, Lobotomy, the original Lobotomy has a 7.2 on Board Game Geek, which is a good rating, but usually that rating does not support $200 price points on the secondhand market. The difference is, it does seem to actually be pulling those prices in. More so, in fact, if you look at the original Lobotomy, people are easily getting $300 plus for their original game. That's because it's out of print, it's hard to get, and there's clearly enough of a demand for it that it's holding high on those price points, despite the rating falling into the good but not great camp. And again, some of those are complaints about the accessibility, the rulebook, things that they are hopefully streamlining or cleaning up this time around. I assume it's been a while, so they've had plenty of opportunity to do so, although that's an assumption that something has been wrong in the past, so take it with a grain of salt. Overall, I think this one is likely to hold its value. The price point on what you're getting here, combined with the fact that it's likely going to go through, again, being not fully available and having exclusive content that's hard to get your hands on, I think this is a relatively safe bet. It does come with a giant asterisk, though, because if not for the market prices on the original Lobotomy, I would be saying this is one that is unlikely to hold its value. And the market prices are proving me wrong, so I'm kind of drifting over based on what I'm seeing, but also uncertain. So I think it's a safe back, but, buyer beware and decide accordingly and be responsible with your money and all of that stuff. Moving on to Tang Garden. This is a longer video today. I'm sorry for that, but we'll keep going. Tang Garden Seasons. This is the final expansion content for Tang Garden. Tang Garden is a tile-laying game with a bunch of interesting scoring mechanisms. It is a very 3D in nature. It's going to be think Carcassonne on a million steroids and drugs and all that, but the steroids and drugs in the form of various characters. As you slowly build up this 3D panorama, as you lay down your panorama cards, as you place down different characters and you track their line of sight to see what they see in their pathway and then score points or money accordingly. It seems like a fun system if you like tile-laying games with a lot going on, although the critiques, and there are critiques, in general, if you look at ratings, the original Tang Garden has been around for a while now. If you look at the ratings on the game, it seems to be getting a 5 out of 5 for production value, for table presence, for all of that, and then let's say a 10 out of 10 for production values, table presence, all of that, and then a 7 or 8 out of 10 in terms of gameplay, which is still not bad, but it just seems to be that one that people think it's amazingly produced and a good or great game depending on your opinion. And there also are some concerns or critiques around how sometimes the production value and the size of things actually gets in the way of seeing, or some of the aspects, seeing some of the visibility, like taking off the top of the pagodas actually makes the game more visible or easy to do, but then it feels less deluxe. So there is that balance or trade-off as you go through it. This is, don't get me wrong, a very well-rated game. It's 7.5 on Board Game Geek. That already drifts heavily into really well-liked, but it comes with that caveat of really incredible production value, good to great gameplay. Although, of course, watch reviews, check various content to see what works for you or not. They do have this fantastic flowchart. I love when companies do this, showing you that do you own it, do you not, what do you care about, what do you not, and directing you towards a pledge, which is always great. The season's expansion is giving you 6 different scenarios kind of to go through, not really scenarios, but modules to play with as they go through. Let's see, this is the content. I'm going to scroll past the content. They show you the content first because it's good to see how much content you get in the game, but scrolling down to the actual stuff, and we have character miniatures, all these characters here, you can be placing them on the board, scoring the various criteria, lots of fun things going on. I'm compelled by the game. I haven't actually gotten it or played it yet, but I do kind of want to pick it up. I've been myself on that fence of is it great or is it good? I don't know yet. We'll have to find out. We have the autumn. And this, by the way, I'm not going to go through each of these because there's a lot to read through. There are 6 different modules to go through. There's autumn, there's winter, there's spring, there's summer, there's solstice, and then there's equinox. And all of them give you slight different modifications to the gameplay. You can read through these to see how the game gives you those different mindsets to be the little puzzles to go through as you go through the game. And that's in addition to the original content, the original base game, the original expansions. They had a lot of stuff for the game. And yes, if you back this game, I'm not sure I'm saying yes, if there's a whole bunch of stretch goals I'm scrolling through, including, by the way, some fun things like bases for the lanterns. We have the pointed bases over here. This is basically because line of sight is a big factor in the game. They're not relying on the characters just looking in direction. They're actually giving you a pointed base so you can more easily see or tell. We have asymmetric player boards. We have more tokens, more expansions, more stuff over there. I'm trying to scroll to the part where you get some free extra miniatures if you're a season 1 backer or whatnot. Basically over here. So all backers from the original Kickstarter, if you're backing at season or at the season's pledge or above, you're gonna get a free upgraded set of miniatures. I don't actually know what the issue was with the original set, but I assume there was an issue with the original set in terms of something. I don't know. If they're giving you an upgraded set, there must have been some issue. But if you're someone who is concerned about that issue that I don't know about, then you can go ahead and get this for free. Or if you're not getting seasons, you can pay €10 for it. Or if you are getting seasons but you're not a returning backer, in case you bought it secondhand or whatever it is, then it'll cost you €5. But those are all options over there, giving you also better stickers for bigger panorama symbols as well. That's everything going on with basically Tang Garden and the season expansion. Overall, as far as the game, how are this one? This one is one where, as far as should you back it, should you not, this is a game where it is likely to hold its value with caveats. Basically, Tang Garden is a general, if you look at the second-hand market and how it's doing, Tang Garden has done a generally good job holding its value with the caveat that it's a range. So, for instance, if the original pledge level, I think, was 160 or whatever it was for the all-in or something, but overall, there's a range in how well it has done on the second-hand market. People selling it below their value, but people selling it above their value overall. It's one that falls in the category of, based on past market sales, if you are someone who's patient, if you're not in a rush, if you're willing to wait for the right price point, you can get your hands on this one. You can sell your pledge if it's not for you and and get your money back. And that is effectively Tang Garden Seasons. Oh, and there's a big box too. Probably should have said that. There's a big box as well, in case you're interested. Next up, we have Fantasy Commander. Fantasy Commander coming from Legends of Sigmund Games. A Fantasy Commander, great art, great production values, miniatures, all that, and 265 backers, and that's kind of standard, 257 backers. This is kind of standard for Legend of Sigma. They generally have a bunch of games that have, solid miniatures, solid art, and gameplay that's medium to good, depending on the ratings you're looking at. I don't know much about Legends of Sigma Fantasy Commander specifically. It's a skirmish game, but past that, I don't know the exact details. I didn't heavily look into this one. I wanted you to see it in case you're interested in it. Their games generally have not done a great job holding their value on the second market, at least not in the typical board game spaces like eBay or Board Game Geek. If it's a separate miniature market, not miniature market, but like a miniature market, that could be a totally different thing because they do put out fantastic miniatures. Their miniatures seem to be top quality in general, and so if from a war gamer stance, from a painting stance, from a D&D stance, there are other reasons to back this above just the board game. But that is Fantasy Commander from Legends of Sigmund. Next up, we have Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan. We got a few left. Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan. Let me give me a second here. I need a drink. I'm probably saying that poorly. Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan, I think, maybe. This is a Euro-style strategy game with dual engine building, worker placement, and also combat, interestingly enough. There's a degree of combat, not really combat, like abstracted combat. But effectively, you're going to be playing 2 cards every single round. And those 2 cards, one's going to determine where you're trying to go, and the other one's determining how much you want to go there, the strength, effectively. The good news is it's not really combat. You might get what you want, but you push somebody else out. Everyone gets stuff in the game, so it's not conflict heavy in the sense that you'll lose things, but it does have a little bit of touch of conflict or planning, however you want to abstract that outwards in this otherwise Euro game. It's a game where you're going to be building out your temple over here, so laying down tiles into your pyramid, matching by symbol or color to build up your own unique advantages. The game ends either after 3 ages or alternatively when a single player has fully built out their pyramid. I do highly recommend watching the video here. By the way, there's a few videos you should be watching. Tang Garden has a fantastic video from Tim Chun. I assume Tim Chun. It looked like his work. We have Lobotomy had a fantastic video. There's a bunch of campaigns that had great videos that I forgot to talk about. Unsettled had a great video. I did mention that. Also biased. But anyways, How Rulers of Yucatan, great video. You could watch that if you want a good feel for generally getting a feel or flow for how the game plays. Looks very cool overall. Looks very compelling. Looks very visually striking. A lot of fun things going on. They do cover in the FAQ that the pyramids, the assembled pyramids, should stay assembled in the base game box. You don't have to assemble them you don't have to disassemble and reassemble them to have them fit, which is always a concern when you have this stuff. Overall, the pledge levels over here are $65 for the How Rulers of Yucatan and $80 if you want the expansion as well. That's what's going on over here. And this is where I'm a little bit on the fence because they say clearly in the FAQ, they say it clearly, I don't know if it's true or not, but they specifically say what exclusives are there in this campaign. And the only thing that seems to be an exclusive is the art prints over here. If you want the $5 art prints over here, that seems to be exclusive. Everything else doesn't. And there are stretch goals, to be very clear. There's some stretch goals, some extra content, some extra cards, some extra stuff, but it seems to be stretch goals that are being added to all the versions of the game. It does not seem to be that there's exclusive content, and that's relevant because if this goes to retail, almost certainly, standard rules apply, this is likely going to be cheaper than $65, because one of 2 things is happening here. Either this game is almost certainly not going to retail, or if it goes to retail, you will be able to pick this up for less than $65 plus the price of shipping. So unless you care about those art prints, it's likely best to wait to retail. Now, I will give the caveat that there's no guarantee it goes to retail. We currently have 919 backers. That is enough backers with enough of a pretty game going on that there's a decent chance this gets picked up for retail distribution, and you can go ahead and pick this thing up for probably close to $55, maybe $60, and that's before shipping, before VAT, before extra prices, and you will be able to get your hands on this game with all the content in retail just fine. Also, there's a chance that some of the stuff does turn out to be exclusive, that whoever they partner with basically says, oh, we have to nix this, this, and this in order to keep the price point down, and so despite them not saying it, it might be that this is the Kickstarter version. There's always these caveats in the picture, but from a pure literal reading of what they are saying, only one thing is exclusive, and that is the art print. So this one does fall into that kind of risk factor either way. If you wait till retail, you may find you get a stripped down version, and the Kickstarter version was the way to go. If you get on a Kickstarter, you may find that this exact same game is $20 cheaper when it makes its way to retail. So what I would say is decide what you care about most. Decide what you care about in terms of, do you care more about the fact that it might end up being cheaper, or do you care more about the fact that you might miss out on it. So you have to decide and go from there and back accordingly. Game looks great. I'm very compelled by it. I don't know whether to get it now or retail or not at all. That's always an option too. Or get Galaxy Trucker for $30. That's always a possibility. Anyways, moving on to Summate, a clever strategy game for 2 players. 263 backers. This is basically dominoes, but with more tiles. Dominoes, as you lay down the typical domino system, you're going to be placing down your dominoes, matching numbers, or alternatively trying to score bonus points by matching up a sum of 8. Seems like a fairly simple abstract game. Simple not in a bad way. Simple in a, hey, good, they took dominoes, they made something more out of it. Good for them. They did have this deluxe version of the game that looks much nicer. It's $35 for the basic version of the game. It's $50 for the deluxe version of the game, but they only made 50 copies, and no one else can get a copy, which is sad because they sold out pretty quickly on that, and I think this is the way to go. This looks so much nicer than the domino one. I'm surprised they're making it limited, but hey, that's what they're doing. Handcrafted, all of that stuff. That's what's going on with Sum 8. Overall, you know, what we have 300 backers, something like that, 267 backers, $10,000 raised, 22 days to go, so more time to go. Will it hold its value? Will it not? I'm skeptical it will. $35, this seems to be leaning more heavily into mass market. With a touch of into, I mean, like, there's enough content creators on it that does clearly drift into the board game space, but, you know, taking dominoes and expanding it is also a bit mass marketing its appeal. I don't see this one holding its value on the secondhand market. I could be wrong. It could fall into a different kind of category, just less board game, more like fancy table stuff, fancy tabletop stuff. At the end of the day, people spend hundreds of dollars on fancy chess sets too, so there's definitely different markets going on. Again, I'm skeptical, but it might drift a little differently in terms of just a different market. But if you want to get your hands on it, especially if you want to wait around and constantly hit refresh and then eventually back that Kickstarter version of the game, oh, it's $95. I'm sorry, not $50. It's $95 Canadian for but only 50 copies available. Glad I caught that before someone else did. Anyways, moving on to Blinks. Blinks, the game system and new party expansion, $52,000 raised, 447 backers. Blinks is a game that's been around for a while, a few different Kickstarters, and every time they come back with a few new games in their system, because basically Blinks is an infrastructure. It's a system that you're buying into, in which you have these Blinks, and each Blink has its own little party game, or not party game inside the Blink. And so if you have 6 Blinks, you have 6 tiles, and 6 games that will use those 6 tiles. If you have 12 Blinks, then you have 12 games that are using those 12 tiles. And the different games run in different ways. Sometimes some games might require more than one tile set, but the goal is to build a system and an infrastructure that benefits from having a whole bunch of Blinks, and you kind of have your little miniature console system. And it will run into the price points of being a console once you have enough of these. These are not cheap. They're relatively affordable, but they are, I mean, look at over here. We have $59 for a pack of 5 Blinks with 5 games. Okay, so that's what you're looking at there. It's basically like $12 a Blink. So if you extrapolate that outwards, if you want 10 Blinks, if you want 20 Blinks, you're basically running into console prices before too long. Not PlayStation prices, but console prices. Blinks is a bunch of games. They have a few new ones over here, leading heavily into the party stuff over here. You can go through the original games, the new ones. They have little descriptions of each one. You can check them out. All fun little things like this one over here. I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but this seems to be trying to eliminate your color before anything else. So as people tap, you're rapidly tapping the center grid. But again, that's a good example where you can see having only 5 or 6 Blinks would not be a lot for that. You might want 10, 15, 25 Blinks, and that rapidly increases in price. So it's both a cool system, also with potential caveats and downsides. One of those caveats and downsides is if you look at most settings of people playing Blinks, it's usually in dimly lit rooms. Not exclusively, but usually. That's because, speaking from my own experience from Blinks, I think it's a cool system, but I find that when you play it in a well-lit room, it is often hard to easily distinguish the colors that you want, making it slightly not as user-friendly as I would like. But it works incredibly well in dimly lit rooms or dark rooms. So that's a little bit of a caveat or background I'd give before you invest in it, that I think it plays best in dimly lit or dark rooms, at least until they come out with a version that makes the colors pop more. I don't know. Like, even over here, you can see these are very shiny. That's because it's basically being held in the dark. So factor that in. As far as will it hold its value, will it not? I don't think so, but I don't really, I take it back. Ignore what I just said. It's not in the board game side of things. If you go on eBay, can you get your money back on these? No idea. It's a little outside my usual board game genre. It's still board game adjacent, so I cover it. But yeah, that's what's going on with Blinks, which brings us to picks of the week. Picks of the week. In general, I have 2 picks of the week. I have one for the game that I am most interested in personally, and then one for the game that will most hold its value. This week, I'm going to have some caveats on both. So basically, Unsettled is both the game that I am easily most interested in personally. I've played it. I gave it a 5 and 5. I'm kind of biased here. Again, not biased. Why am I saying biased? I like a game. That's not biased. Biased would be like if, like, you know, Unsettled ONEB had whatever, but whatever. Unsettled. I like. They've never even sent me a prototype copy, just for context. And anyways, and that's not a critique ONEB. I love you guys. Anyways, going back to this, so Unsettled is my pick of the week as far as a game that I am most interested in. I also think it is the one that is most likely to hold its value. But because I don't like giving both awards to one game, I'm going to give 2 secondaries for each of those. In terms of holding its value, I think Lobotomy is the second most likely to hold its value, with the caveat that I could be horrifically wrong. Just there clearly was a demand in the last one. I assume that demand will translate over into the next one as well. And then as far as personal interest, second place, that's going to go to Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan. I don't think I'm backing in a Kickstarter. As of right now, I'm probably waiting to retail just to be responsible, but I definitely am interested in this. It looks pretty, it looks shiny, it looks like there's multiple scoring objectives going on, multiple different things to manage or be mindful of as you go. Very compelled by Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan. And that is everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game. Oh, no, wait, one more thing, I forgot. And now, a new thing that I'm doing, basically, I did this in the past, but I'm doing it now as well, just basically announcing a few upcoming Kickstarters next week to look forward to. It's not going to be comprehensive, it's going to be just briefly a few things coming up. And to that end, we have Earth Under Siege Flashpoint launching on March 1st. I highly recommend this one, look into it, all that stuff. We have Illiterati, which looks very compelling. I like ward games, I like cooperative ward games, in theory, we'll have to find out. And then as well as that, we have the Western Legends Big Box, which I'm not personally interested in, but you might actually be interested in because it's a big box for all your Western Legends content in case you wanted that. And yes, these wooden organizers fit in just fine. And that is everything. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Thanks for being here, and have a good one. See, it's really, really frazzling, by the way. Right about when I was up to Tang Garden, I got completely off my game, because I'm pretty sure, I'm going to go check in a few minutes, but I'm pretty sure I heard my friend come in, because he wants to pick up some escape room games. I just didn't know he was coming right now, but he probably didn't know I was filming right now. And then I'm sitting here talking to the camera. This is the perils of being a content creator. I'm sitting here talking to the camera, and I have in the back of my mind the entire time just buzzing, is he about to just walk down the stairs and just interrupt me? And I'm trying to, like, be focused and direct, while with the context knowing that I'm about to potentially be interrupted, which puts me completely off my game, because then I'll have to do like a hard cut. I don't like doing hard cuts. I like the fact that I just do unedited takes for the most part. So that threw me off my game there. So if you go back and look at the Tang Garden segment, you'll see that I was a little bit all over the place, briefly, kind of. I was talking about, like, I even skipped talking about the pledge levels. I didn't even talk about the pledge levels. I was all in my head. It's hard. It's hard. In any case, Guy was asking his father, hey, Dad, can you explain what a solar eclipse is? Dad says, no, son,